Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Metropolitan Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session for its regularly scheduled meeting of October 17th, 2013. I'm Joey Hargis, and I'll be presenting the cases for review in today's public hearing. At this time, I would ask everyone please either turn off or silence their cell phones so as not to disrupt today's meeting. We would appreciate it. The procedure will be to introduce the case record as the Codes Department has it on the wall here by means of a PowerPoint presentation. We'll present any letters that we've received in support or opposition to a particular case, as well as any correspondence from other Metro agencies. At the conclusion of our presentation, the applicant will come first to the table, along with any persons in support. After the applicants presented their case, the board will hear from those parties opposed to a case. And then after the opposition speaks, the applicant will have a period for rebuttal. In the board's rules, cases with opposition, each side of a case is allotted 15 minutes as a total to present their case. If the applicant wishes to have a rebuttal period, they do need to save some of their 15 minutes for the rebuttal. All section numbers I referred to today come directly from the Metropolitan Zoning Code, which was adopted by the Metro Council and became effective January 1st, 1998, and applies to the entire jurisdiction of Metro government. I'll introduce and make a part of the record the zoning code, a copy of which is at my desk, and I'll dispense from reading into any individual sections unless the applicant or opposition requests that those sections be read. The zoning code requires that these proceedings be taped. Therefore, it's imperative anyone wishing to address this board to please come forward. Your microphone stand looks just like mine. Just lower that towards you. Hit the speak button on there. You'll notice the red ring comes on. Your mic is hot. Provide your testimony when you're done. If you'll turn that off, we would appreciate it. It should be noted that it's found anyone's presented false or misleading testimony to this board that may have affected the board's decision. Any approval can be revoked at a later date by means of a show cause hearing. The board will go through all cases set for public hearing today, and after each case, the board will discuss and vote on that case. The board is vested with the power to act on the cases as outlined in Section 1740-180 of the Metro Code of Law. The code requires that 4 members of the 7-member board be present to constitute a quorum. The code also requires 4 affirmative votes to grant your application. I have presently 4 members present. You must have all 4 votes to vote to approve your request. If you fail to get those 4 votes, your case will automatically be set for a new public hearing. That public hearing is the December 5th hearing of the Metro Board of Zoning Appeals. No additional fees will be charged of you. We will handle the re-advertisement, and you will return on December 5th for a new case. In the event that I have 5 members that hear your case and you fail to get 4 votes, your case will stay on our agenda for the next 30 days. And during that 30-day time, within our next meetings in the next 30 days, any of the 5 members can change their vote. The 6th and 7th member can watch today's proceedings, review the paper record, and become eligible in your case and then participate. If after 30 days no one's changed their vote or no one else has come in to review the record, your case is deemed denied by operation of law for failure to obtain 4 votes. The applicant or any aggrieved property owner may request a rehearing of this board within 60 days of today's public hearing. Further, any applicant or aggrieved property owner may appeal this board's decision to Chancery or Circuit Court within the same 60-day period. But after that 60 days has elapsed, the board's decision is final, and no further action may be taken. If you're an applicant and your case is granted, it is necessary for you to come and pick up the permit for which you've applied. You can begin doing so on Monday morning in the Codes office where you filed your appeal. It should be noted you have 2 years from today's date to pick up your permit for this approval to remain valid. So this is just one step in your process and not the final resolution of it. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases were filed in proper order. Applicants were notified by certified mail as required by the zoning code. All affected property owners within 300 feet were notified by mail, and a legal ad was published in the Tennessean as required by the code. Before I cover any preliminary announcements or consent agenda, the board does allow elected officials to address the board, and I see I have Councilman Glover with me. Would you like to address the board at this time? Yes. All right, come forward, please, sir.
Thank you, members of the Commission. I come before you today to discuss case number 2013-106, 107 and 108. I've been contacted by constituents in my district opposing 106 and 107, considering 108 is already built. I think that everybody is going to kind of live with that one, or depending upon what your vote is on it. But I would ask that we oppose the variance of 106 and 107. The land is not changed. I don't know of any new hardships that could possibly be there from when it was originally filed and when it was originally laid out for this subdivision. So I would respectfully ask you to oppose 106 and 107.
Thank you for being here. The main reason for the opposition is what?
There's been no changes in the property, and for the setback that they're asking for, it doesn't meet the requirements for the RS-15, is my understanding. I mean, unless something's changed in the law that I'm unaware of.
Okay, thank you. And 108.
The home is built. The people have moved in, is my understanding.
Okay, okay.
So I think it'd be pretty difficult. I'd refer to Metro Legal, but I think it'd be pretty difficult for us to, change our minds now on that one. But as we move forward, I don't see any particular reason that we would need to do the variance for 106 or 107. Is that fine? Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Councilman, for visiting us. I think it's your first visit to the BZA. Isn't it? All right. Well, we're glad to have you. Please come anytime. Okay, a couple of preliminary announcements. The first being the case at the top of page 2, case 2013-92, the property at West Running Brook Road. The applicant, we have withdrawn the case, and I list as withdrawn. I'd like to, for the record, to reflect this as a deferral. The contractor who filed the appeal check bounced, essentially. So we, as a matter of procedure, we yanked the case from the agenda until payment is made. The applicant and the homeowners here and was unaware that occurred, and I've explained to her situation. So just as soon as we get that squared away, we'll get that back on the agenda. But I want the record to reflect it is not a withdrawal; it will be a deferral. And I've talked to the homeowner who was completely unaware that occurred. So I don't want that to reflect upon her in any way. So case 92 will not be.
Which meeting will it be at?
It'll be the next meeting, that is November the 7th.
Okay.
And that will list it it will probably come out to be the first meeting on the first case on the agenda based on the.
Can we go ahead and just put it the first case on the agenda?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely. Ma'am, that case will be heard first on November the 7th at 1 o'clock, same location that we're at now. The next announcement I have is case 2013-94. The Jocelyn Sign Company is the appellant of the property at 2831 Gallatin Pike. They were appealing the zoning administrator's interpretation of the code. That case has been withdrawn by the applicant. Case 94 is off our agenda, and case 102, the Vanderbilt University, has requested a deferral until November 21st. That case will actually be healed. That will be at the end of that agenda that date. I'm currently taking cases for that agenda, so I don't know how large a meeting that will be, but by your rules, an appellant's deferral goes to the end of the agenda of that date. As far as preliminary announcements, those are my announcements on those. So if anyone is here for cases 92, 94, and 102, all of the cases on page 2, none of those will be heard today for the reasons I stated. And you are free to go. If you'd like to stay, we'd appreciate you hanging around. Okay, consent agenda. The board has a consent agenda, and prior to the meeting, a board member reviews the record in each case, and if they feel the applicant meets the criteria for the variance that they've requested, they recommend the case to the remaining board members for consent. I'll now call those cases recommended by Mr. Taylor, recommended for the consent agenda. If you're here in opposition to any of the cases that I call, please raise your hand and we'll hear those in the regular order. If I do not call your case, you are not on the consent agenda. We'll hear you in the regular order as listed on the agenda. The first case recommended for the consent is case at the page 1, 2013-80. Mr. Thuan Lam, the appellant and owner at 705 Harding Place, requesting a variance in street setbacks. The zone of visibility appeal is withdrawn by staff. There's no appeal needed for that. And is a request to allow the use of existing fence constructed within the required setback. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 80 present? Mr. Chairman, seeing none, the applicant constructed a fence. Our code does not require a permit for a fence. The gentleman, after it was completed, we realized that it was too close to the street. It was approximately 3 feet too close. He did submit into the record a petition of 38 names of his neighbors that asking to keep the fence as it is and not to make him remove it. So that case is recommended for the consent agenda today. The next case recommended for the consent agenda is case 2013-105 at the bottom of page 3. Mr. Mark Hayes, the appellant and owner of the property at 905 44th Avenue North, requesting a variance in the height of the fence in a landscape buffer in OR20. Is anyone present in opposition to case 105 on 44th Avenue North? Okay, seeing none. The urban forester weighed in prior to the meeting with me, and he's recommends approval of the case as well. It's a request to reduce the height of the fence inside that buffer yard. And yes.
I'm Mark Hayes.
Okay.
It's actually a side setback.
Okay, let's remove that from the consent agenda. Mr. Hayes and I need to talk and see if that's, we'll double check our records. So let's remove 105 from the consent agenda. And then finally, case recommended for the consent agenda is the case the councilman alluded to, case 113-108 at 2133 Gina Lane. This is the home that is occupied and currently built in, and again, occupied by residents, requesting a side street setback in RS 15. And those two cases now, 108 and 80. Recommended for the consent agenda. A motion by Mr. Taylor.
Okay, you've heard the motion for the items on consent agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay. If you are here for case 80 and 105, your cases have been approved. 80 and 108, your cases have been approved. We'll hear the first case before the board. Let me call the appellant to the table. Mr. Jonathan Helm is the appellant, case 2013-103. If you'll come forward. Are any parties present opposed to case 103? Okay. Seeing none, if you are Mr. Helm and Mr. Clerk, while I get that up and running, the applicants for case 80 and 108, your cases have been granted, and you are free to go. All right. Guys, let me pull up the presentation and get the board started, and I'll turn it over to you all. This comes before you as a variance in the street setbacks in RS 7.5 to request the construction of a 22 by 22 detached garage to the rear of the residence. The subject property is located, as you see here, surrounded in red. It fronts on Media Street. Wyoming Avenue to the north is also a public street, and that's where the variance occurs in street setback. Because that is a public street, there's a minimum 20-foot setback required off of Wyoming. This is a area photograph, approximately 2010, showing the structures on the lot. This is the site plan submitted by the appellant to our office, requesting a 10-foot setback off of Wyoming for an entry from the garage off of Wyoming into the proposed garage located here. This new home is currently under construction and faces Media Street, facing south. The variance requires that because this is a public street and not an alley, it requires a 20-foot setback. This is looking at the subject property from Media Street, and then the parcels facing west and east along said street. And then the proposed location of the garage, approximately where my cursor is, again in this location. And the required setback distance off of Wyoming is 20 feet.
An aerial on that by any chance, Joey?
Of the, yes, here in this. That structure which you see here is obviously no longer on the property, and the home itself has been raised. Note for history for members of the board, earlier this year we had an appeal on the corner lot at the intersection of 42nd and Media for an addition to a non-conforming garage. This garage here is loaded in from the interior of the property and comes out on 42nd. The appellant came to you for a small addition on the side of the garage, approximately where my cursor is. This board granted that. Really, that's the case record. The codes office has it. I believe you, in your packets, you have the information submitted to you by the appellant.
Joey, how far was the old house on this property back from the street?
I don't know for certain. My guesstimate is probably in the 25 to 30 foot distance off of Media, but I can't confirm.
And the neighboring houses, do we know?
The adjoining homes themselves are, both of these homes that you see in the aerial are there today. The setback for us is, oh yeah, here it is, I'm sorry, 34 feet 6 inches to the house to the west, and about 30, looks like 4 to the house to the east. And so this is splitting the difference between the two to conform with the setback.
Thanks.
All right, with that, I'll turn it over to you all. Linda, I have 10 minutes to present. Any other parties present? Last call. In opposition, none. I'll turn it over to you all.
Okay, thank you. I'm Preston Quirk. I'm architect for L&H Properties. I designed this new residence at 4112 Media Street. And I would like to point out what was circled in red on the map is not the actual lot. It's 3 lots to the left. I don't know if we want to get that. What's circled is parcel 330, and we're on parcel 333, which is one more lot over, or the third lot in from 42nd Avenue, that one right there.
I apologize, guys. It's that one right there.
Sorry, I just wanted to point that out since people are obviously looking at the aerial photograph. And the only real difference is it is a shallower lot. So, anyways.
Could you pull that microphone too?
Yes. Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. So the permit to build this residence was obtained in June of this year, 2013. The site plan was approved at that time to build the house and a 22-foot square 2-car garage behind the house. The house was started immediately. Builder delayed start on the garage to allow them areas for lumber storage and site access. And then during construction, I think about mid-August, codes called Mr. Helm, and well, the site plan had been approved when we got the permit for the house. The comment was made that we needed a 20-foot setback off the street for the garage versus the 10 feet that was on the original site plan. He stopped work on the garage at that point. Did you have footings poured?
We were going to pour them.
Getting ready to pour footing, so that was stopped. He filed the appeal for this, and that's why we're here today. As Joey mentioned, the neighbor on the corner, Mr. Mitchell at 4116, had obtained a variance in February of this year for a 10-foot rear setback on addition to his garage. The lots on this block are a little bit unusual. You don't find this situation in many parts of Nashville where you have basically 2 streets and they're through lots, and the Wyoming Avenue as you can see from the aerial photograph, pretty much functions as access to most people's garage or parking area from the back. So it's almost acted as an alley for these houses since they were built probably in the 30s and 40s. So it's kind of an unusual situation, but that original development pattern, all the houses face media with garages off Wyoming. And Wyoming also dead ends at the east side of the map you see up on the screen. And then in addition, the pavement on Wyoming is about 20 feet off the back lot lines of these houses. Typically, your pavement will be more centered in a 50-foot right-of-way, but there is about 20 feet of pavement between the property line and the paving on Wyoming. And then in addition to the neighbor at the corner that got a variance earlier this year, in November of 2010, the house at 4108 Media received a permit with a 10-foot, or received a variance and a permit for a carport to be 10 feet off the rear line. So based on those cases from the last 3 years that allowed 10-foot rear setbacks, we're basically asking for a similar variance. And hardships in this case would be it's a relatively shallow lot with this unique configuration of the two streets and then the two precedents on the block. So that's really all I have. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Okay, so you have got a building permit, and you understood that you were going to be able to build a garage.
Right.
Based on what setback? Was that, when did that come up?
10-foot setback. That was in June when it was submitted.
Okay.
And it was approved.
Yes.
Okay. I'm clear.
And you've already started the foundation work, you say?
It's been excavated for the foundation. I mean, that just kind of coincidentally, same time as doing excavations when we had a call from code saying it needed to be 20 feet instead of the 10 that was previously approved.
So what would happen if you were not able to get the variance? How would that affect the project?
It would put the garage pretty close to the rear of the house. If we had known at the start that it had to be 20 feet off, we probably would have had a shallower house on there. It affects the rear yard, and rear yards are kind of at a premium in the inner city neighborhoods. So.
And you've already done all the architectural design?
The house is
everything.
built. I mean, the house is just about finished.
Yeah, the only concern I had on this project was the Wyoming Street and how the garage looks, and out of concern for the residents on Wyoming Street to look at a garage. If it backed up to an alley, it may very well be kind of a no-brainer, but it would be 10 foot. You would have, that's the variance you'd have, or the setback you'd have anyway. So that the 10 feet is not as much of a concern as it is the aesthetics of that garage. And based on what I saw of the house that's already under construction, I have a lot less concern if it's going to be very similar. But literally out of respect for the folks on Wyoming who will be looking at someone's backyard and have been, for 100 years, I think there should have been, should be some consideration for that.
It also appears that most of the access and parking is on the Wyoming side anyway, correct?
It all is.
It is. Yeah.
And they've been used to this since, what, the 40s?
Yeah.
I'd say at least that, if not
They bought
more.
the house knowing that this is going on. Okay. Okay. I'm ready.
Ready to?
Yeah, let's close the hearing.
We'll close the public hearing. Joy? Discussions?
Yeah, I don't have any. My main issue was that and it wasn't required, that what we had submitted didn't have any elevations, or I didn't know what the construction was going to look like. We've seen that today, and I have no issue with it. And I'm fine with what they're proposing.
I don't have a problem with it, especially seeing that all the other houses are loaded off the Wyoming Avenue anyway, so.
It's a unique street, and there's just not any other. I mean, there are unique characteristics to that lot because of the way it's positioned on that street.
Okay, would entertain a motion?
David, you want to hit a motion?
We got our guide sheet there somewhere.
Yeah, that's right here.
Okay. I move that we approve case 2013-103, a variance giving the rear street back for the detached lot based on the narrowness and odd shape of the lot that meets the hardship.
I'll second.
Okay, you heard the motion been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
Thank you.
Board adopts case 103 on a vote of 4-0. And, Mr. Chairman, to get back to our consent agenda item, case 105 at the bottom, I completely misread what that was. The request has not changed. Your secretary read it wrong. The request was to narrow the landscape buffer yard from 10 feet on the west side to 5 feet. That 10-foot buffer yard is actually 25% of the lot width. There are some provisions under the zoning code that allow reductions. The urban forester sent to you guys, he is favorable still of a 5-foot buffer. It will have a 6-foot masonry wall as required, and the plant material that should be in that 10-foot buffer. It's just narrower, and that based on a 40-foot wide lot.
Add that back to consent.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was distracted there.
We're just adding case 105 back to the consent
Okay.
agenda.
And I'll second that.
All in favor of the motion to move it back, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So moved.
The motion should, yes, we approved it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also your motion to approve. So case 105 is approved for consent agenda.
Oh, we motioned to put it back on the consent. And then,
Okay.
All right. So 105 is approved as well. Back on the consent agenda. So our next case, case 2013-104, is the applicant present on case 104. Mr. Dana Risk. All right, come on forward, sir. 1009 Southside Court, requesting a variance in the R6 UZO provisions to cover the existing uncovered front porch and handicap ramp referred to the board under section 17-12020. The appellant has alleged the board has jurisdiction under section 1740-180 item B. This case is back before you. This board actually approved under 2013-005 the deck that you see constructed here and handicap ramp along the side of the structure in this location. You all placed a condition that it remain uncovered. Mr. Risk approached our office about finding out how could he ask to cover this porch. And so we advised him that he would have to file an appeal requesting that condition be removed on the 2013-008. So it is a new case. The only difference is you are not granting a street setback variance that has already been granted, but it's whether or not he can cover this front porch area on the front of the home. This is looking at the subject property and the homes to either side, and then a view of the porch as constructed upon my visit prior to this here. Those are to the left and to the right, Mr. Risk's.
And the aerial?
Location. Now,
And then was the porch was built to the
front, yes, sir.
and it was
Right.
built to the specs that
Yes, sir.
were submitted?
Yes, sir. It conforms with what this board approved on its location and size and all those aspects. Just the condition was that it has to remain uncovered. Oh, I'm sorry. Now, obviously, the front porch does not show on the aerial. The aerial's a couple years older.
Thank you.
That's all our photos. With that, I'll turn over to the applicant. Any parties present in opposition to case 105? Okay, seeing none, sir, you'll have 10 minutes to present your case to the board.
Joey, can you leave us with the front view of the house?
Absolutely.
Yes, if we could, afternoon, y'all. If we could go back to the aerial for just a second, or to the left of that picture there is only one house to my left, and there's only two more houses, well, to your left. And then it goes into a court, and across the street, it's all commercial, and it closes up about 3:30, 4 o'clock, so I don't have any neighbors across. I only have one to the right and only two to the left before they turn into the court. The reason I'm asking for it is I don't have a back door. My mom died. My dad's wife died. I brought him down here 4 years ago. He had a heart attack a year after, and he's confined to oxygen for the rest of his life, I guess. And he lays in bed, he watches TV, and I try to get him out. But on that side where that ramp goes around, that was the only cover I had before. And he'd go out there late at night, turn out the lights, say it would draw bugs. And I have an alley behind us, and in between the street and the alley, that's where he would be. And I'd worry about him being out there so late. I couldn't put any fear into him. It just didn't bother him being out there at late. So finally got this approved where I could get him out there in the front. And he's a little more social with my neighbors. They seem to know him pretty good, and they like to come over and talk to him, but they never knew he was out on the side of that house. So as far as quality of life, if I can get him away from the TV a couple times a day, get him out there, but the sun rises on that side. It stays there most of the day. He just burns up. And the cold doesn't bother him, but, when we get rain sometimes, it just rains for days, so he's sitting in that house, glued to the TV set. He used to be able to walk to the side of the house, and he can no longer do that. So he can get in a wheelchair. I fixed it so it was level where he, come right out. So he could wheel himself out there. But as I say, he just sits in that sun and he cooks. So he's only been out there twice since I built it.
Can we see that aerial view again, Joey?
The corner house, I can't tell which way you all are looking at. The corner house faces Southside Avenue. So that's why there's only that one neighbor to the side. And then you can see there's only two houses. Well, they're not exactly in line, so when we look past each other, you can look up the street whether the porch is covered or not, and there's nothing blocking. And again, across the street, it's all commercial. So I have spoken to my neighbors. I didn't bring anything signed. They said they'd sign whatever I needed. Richard Denopoulos, he said I probably need to do that after this meeting if it was approved. But they all said they didn't have a problem with it, or wouldn't call them any problem.
How big is the porch? I mean, it does not show here, right? But
Well, the porch is 33 feet, but I'm not looking to cover everything. I'm just looking to cover from the window towards the middle of the house to the end
So
of the house.
you're looking to cover one side of the porch.
Yes, if you can show the handicap ramp, you can see where I'll stop it. Yeah, I'll be stopping it at that guttering. And it'll
Go to the front door?
It'll go past the front door.
Oh, I see. But it'll cover the front of the house, the whole
Yes.
front of the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Do any of you recall why we landed this condition on this?
Probably because it was the front of the house.
Yeah, I think it was a setback, or variance on setback, and I think it was on the consent agenda under the condition that it just not be enclosed or covered, and that was, the appellant agreed at the time and said that's fine. There wasn't any intent to do that. But I don't remember it being
Contentious.
Yeah, I don't remember it being discussed. I thought it was a consent
Yeah, I don't
item.
even really remember us ever discussing this particular situation with not covering it.
I was confused about that when I went to Richard Denopoulos after they approved it. I asked him, I said, so what now do I got to do to get it covered? He thought that I put that condition in there. I said, I wouldn't put that in there. I never plan on closing it in, only covering it. I never have any plans for that. He says, I thought you did it. I said, I thought you did it. So he made some calls while I was sitting there and found out that it was just one of the...
It was an accident,
But
sounds
it
like.
was very specifically put in the record, but you're saying that you want it covered but not enclosed.
Never. I never want... because I'm so far into the city, enclosing it wouldn't be safe anyway. It would just allow people to get up there and go through the windows or...
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just not far from Broadway.
Anything else?
Can I throw in just a For the record, I'd check with Mr. Risk. I don't know if you, Richard, you discussed this. The code would allow you to cantilever a cover off the building wall 6 feet. I don't know if you want to go the full 10. It will allow you under the code now to do a 6-foot projection off the building wall without any supports, just a awning,
Right.
kind of a canopy sort of thing that is available to you. I don't know if that
I didn't know that at the
had been
time.
discussed at all.
I think, I think he's concerned with the sunlight and things like that, so that doesn't sound like a good solution here.
Well, see, if I had, the thing was, I could have put it out back, but there is no back door to this
Sure.
house. Nothing.
Of course.
And there's only about 30 feet between my house and my neighbor's house. And then I have the alley, and it's just too many safety concerns.
Sure.
You can see it's,
Anything else you could think of?
well, like I said, my dad's
Okay,
stuck
yeah.
in that house for quality of life. If I could get him out there
Okay.
and be a little more social, because other than that, I don't have friends over. I don't
Sure.
entertain, and he's
Okay.
just in that house all the time by
Sure.
himself.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Hearing Joey.
All right, we'll close the public hearing on case 104.
All right, discussions?
Well, as we talked about, I'm not sure necessarily why we put that in there. There was no objection from the neighbors. We got no letters. Councilperson didn't send us anything, so I don't have any problems with this.
Joey, my only question to you is one of protocols here. The fact that we approved this as a variance before, is all we're asking for now is to make a motion to lift the condition? We don't
Yes.
have to come up with a new hardship?
Yes, you're just
Okay.
lifting the condition of the prior appeal. I renumber it so we can keep the records separated.
So
I do think the condition should be it's not enclosed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And which he said he would never do that, so
Exactly.
let's.
all right, so I guess we're just making a motion to lift the condition under this. All right, so I would like to go ahead and make a motion. Since it's not, we've already made the variance motion, we just add to lift the condition of covering it, but not enclosing it. Okay.
I think you're saying the motion is to
We lift-
strike the part where it
Right.
says you can't
Cover it.
but add that it can't be enclosed.
Keep enclosed, right? Doesn't it say, it must remain uncovered?
But it doesn't speak to
Okay,
it being
I got you.
enclosed.
I hear what you're saying. So we're going to say then, Joey, since the way it reads, the deck and ramp must remain uncovered, we'll lift this condition and just add that it cannot be enclosed.
Okay.
That's my motion. Okay.
I'd second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
Good luck to you and your file.
The motion carries on a vote of 4-0 with the condition it's not to be enclosed. Okay. That brings us to the next case, case 2013-106. Cameron Walker, the appellant, George Dunn, owner of the property at 2205 Jennifer Court, requesting variances in side street back and garage door setback in RS-15 to construct a new single-family residence at 2,225 square feet with an attached garage of 425 and porches and decks, referred to the board under Section 17-12030A and 17-12060D. The appellant has alleged board would have jurisdiction under Section 1740-180B. Is the applicant present? All right, sir, come forward. You'll have 15 minutes to present your case to the board. Although these cases are similar, we will have to handle them consecutively on it. You'll have 15 minutes to present. You've seen a little bit what we do.
Okay, as the councilman said, the property has not changed. The drawings were approved by the Planning Commission to have 10-foot setbacks on those 3 lots. On
Wait,
one
before
of
you,
them,
before you
I'm
get,
sorry.
That's okay. Before you get started, let me go through the record for them, and
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
And then the folks here in opposition, you'll have 15 minutes to talk, after which Mr. Dunn will have a period for rebuttal. Be sure that clock to your right, that's your time that you'll have once I turn it over to you, and be sure to save some of that time for rebuttal after the opposition comes. Let me go through the case that we have here. The subject property that we're discussing in case 106 is parcel 5. That's this parcel here, where my cursor is currently showing. The site plan is oriented to reflect that. Nature of the request is a street setback, both for the, off the front property line of 11 feet is requested. There's 20 required. Additionally, as it discussed, there's a street setback on the garage door. The zoning code requires a 20-foot setback for garage doors facing a public street, and that's at this location. As you can tell, looking at the scale, it's approximately 17 feet, it appears, from this point to here. So as we go from 17 down to 11, obviously across the face of that garage, it diminishes as well. So the caption we list here is the worst case listed there. The gentleman alluded to a 10-foot mark on the subdivision plat. That mark on the subplat, which I can get a copy of you for, is a utility easement and not a setback. As the plat, we'll pass that around to you. As you'll note on the subdivision plat, the setbacks themselves in the notes say that the setback is to be determined by the Metro Zoning Code. The Planning Department, when they adopt setbacks and subdivisions, do not place setbacks on those plats any longer. They did back in the 70s and 80s, but we stopped that practice. Sonny did about that time, because the zoning code may have a greater setback, and that way there's no confusion between the utility easement line and the setback. And I'll get a copy of that subplat and pass it to you, and you'll see that note on there.
Do you not have it, Joey?
I believe, yeah, that's it in the record. The opposition submitted one. I'll get a copy of that from the applicant. This is the lot in question at the intersection of Jennifer Court and Gina Lane. Gina Lane is running north-south on the right-hand side of the photograph. The variance would be located at the closest point 11 feet down near the property line of the adjoining parcel there, and then the garage door setbacks would be off of Gina here in the orientation of the home. As you see, oriented toward the cul-de-sac at Jennifer Court with a side-loaded garage. I guess for directional purposes, be the northwest corner of the home here. So the house would face the cul-de-sac. Thus, this is a view of both the adjoining properties, both to the south and to the east. So that's the nature of the request on this lot. With that, sir, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll get a copy of that subplat from you.
Oh, the only thing I'm asking is for...
Please introduce yourself for the
I'm
record.
Cameron Walker with Buddy Dunn Contractors. We do also have 9, it don't show on there, but there is 9 extra feet which before the street with the sidewalk and the 5-foot open space. So there is another 9 feet there. But it's just the contour of those lots to keep the houses the size that we've been doing, trying to keep the community the same size, the same look, style, just is the reason I'm asking for the variance.
I guess the first impression I have on what's submitted is that it's a fairly large lot, and
It is, sir, but with the contours, I'm just, it's hard to put a square house on that contoured lot. You can see is with the front yard.
yeah, and I guess, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything, but it doesn't have to be a square house. I mean, I don't understand why you can't have, I don't know how big the house is, but it seems like that if the dotted line I have on what I believe you submitted was the buildable area, there's just a lot of space in the buildable area that's not being used, and it seems...
Yes, sir, but you can see either side I have no other space. Front and back, I have minimum backyards and front yards.
Right.
That's, I'm confined there.
It is an odd-shaped lot.
It is, those 3 are very odd-shaped lots. Actually, 12, the one that somebody's already living in, is probably the most ordinary shaped of any of them.
Joey, do you have the elevation where you took of the signs? Yeah. Okay.
You can see the size and the quality of the houses. Was trying not to put just one of these houses that you have a garage door and a front door. You know what was trying to keep away from a 30 or 40-foot house.
Is this a plan that's unique to this lot, or is this a plan that?
No, that is a plan that's been built, actually, it's the same plan as Mr. Zant's with a little variation inside.
And I guess, and that really, again, was my point, is that it seems like you're trying to fit an already designed house onto a lot that doesn't fit the already designed house, and yet what I'm looking at shows buildable area to build the same size house, but with maybe a different architectural look, or different architectural design, you know.
Well, I was just trying to stay away from the 40-foot and 30-foot houses. I mean, I can. I'm glad to. I was just trying to keep the integrity of the subdivision, you know, the same size for everybody's property values, for one, and mine too.
Right.
I mean, I can put, as far as the bylaws, I can put, you know, as small as 1,400 square foot house in there. I was just trying to stay with what's already in there is what I'm trying to do.
Right.
So you've got neighbors opposed and your council person opposed.
Why, you know, what did you do to try to win your neighbors and your council person over, and why weren't you successful there?
I don't know. It's the first time I've heard from him. He's talked to the owner, George Dunn, but he has not talked to me. We sent letters explaining with drawings, you know, what the lots were drawn like and how we were going to put the house on there, trying to explain. That's all, you know, that's what I tried to do to him. And this is the first that I've heard from him personally since we did the letters 3 weeks ago, probably.
Did you have a neighborhood meeting?
No, we have not turned it over to them yet as a 75% done, you know.
No, I'm just saying, when you...
I gave them all a letter. Well, of course, Joey sent them a letter, you know, explaining what we were trying to do. And then I gave them a letter with drawings of the plot plans showing what we were exactly trying to do instead of just words that was on the Metro letter.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, sir, I really don't know what else I can add besides just, all right.
You'll have 14 minutes rebuttal time, so you can come back.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Come on forward. Miss, would you like to address the board as well? Okay.
I would.
Are we ready? Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. In a lot of ways, I'm sorry to have to be here, but
Introduce yourself, please.
I share your...
We need your name and...
let's do that. My name is Jim Zant, Z-A-N-T. I live at 2113 Gina Lane, and if you have a site package there showing all of the homes platted out there, I live on lot 17, which is across the street from application to follow this one, number 107. So at any rate, I really am sorry to have to be here objecting, but I've been in your shoes for 20 years in 3 different states. I've been a vice chairman and a chairman of a zoning board of appeals, a planning and zoning commission, and a member of a board of adjustment and planning commissions in 3 communities in 3 states. And sadly, I feel compelled, knowing what I know, to object to both appeals, number 106 and 107. As you well know, Metro Council appoints you to this commission to uphold the ordinances wherever possible, and certainly if the applicant can prove legally significant and justifiable hardship, then you certainly have the authority to grant exceptions, variances from the regulations. In this case, and the one to follow, I don't believe that you have sufficient hardship. After both receiving notices from Metro Codes and somewhat of a menacing letter from the applicant, which threatened shotgun houses if the variances weren't granted, I called the owner of the company, Mr. Buddy Dunn, who is Mr. Walker's supervisor. He claimed to me that Metro had changed the rules in the middle of the ballgame. Mr. Walker also stated that Metro zoning had approved 10-foot setbacks on these corner lots, and after that they were originally platted. I found those claims in my research to be false, because the current ordinance with 20-foot setbacks on both streets and corner lots was adopted in 1998. And I wondered to myself, I was a small businessman. I don't know how a builder of nearly 50 years experience wouldn't know this. I mean, we're all subject to regulations in running any business, and that one is critical in terms of his being successful as a builder. If you look on the letter that I submitted to you, which had some exhibits, if you look at Exhibit 3 attached to that letter, Mr. Dunn apparently had no problem conforming to the setbacks on the corner lot at the corner of Raven and Gina in 2010 when he built on Lot 2. Because if you look at that, it's my conclusion from the views that I've got there that it's 20 feet in both directions. He further claimed to me in a rather excited phone conversation that we had that he couldn't make any money on smaller homes, and that he'd have to build, and that frankly that enters the arena of economic viability, which from my experience is a pretty much legally prohibited reason to grant variances in every state I worked. In essence, both of those scenarios, in my mind, are not legally justifiable hardships to earn a variance, since the only hardships I see here on recently platted lots appear to be self-imposed. And therefore, I feel they're excessive incursions into established setback areas, and therefore are unreasonable and unwarranted. In short, we feel Mr. Dunn has not expended his best efforts to utilize and fit one of his 7 base models and 7 variations thereof. He's got 14 base selections from which to choose to place them on these particular lots in his sales literature. And I think he was stopped dead in his tracks at the building department as they submitted these site plans, and were referred to go seek a variance. Was the only way they'd ever get those particular structures approved and built. And I call those basically, when there are no other options explored, somewhat of a pursuit of a variance of convenience, because I think he has a lot more opportunities to select from other building configurations, and I think, Mr. Taylor, you referred to something like that. We really only want, and I really didn't think at age 72 that I'd have to be on the other side of the coin here in front of you, but we only want him to build the architecturally compatible homes his sales literature promotes in this recently platted subdivision, within the framework of what the regulations would require. Thus, we kindly urge you to deny these appeals and thereby encourage Mr. Dunn to resubmit plans that are in compliance and aesthetically harmonious with the approximately 15 structures that he's already built in the subdivision. That amounts to roughly $3 million worth of real estate development, if my numbers are basically correct. And it's a beautiful subdivision. To this point in time, it's just great. It's glorious, and it represented a great value. So that's what I had to say. Thank you for your consideration. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
I do have a question for you. So, besides the fact that you feel like this is conforming to the existing regulations. This is the reason our board exists, is that there are moments in which it's sensible for a variance to be granted.
Absolutely.
And so my question to you is, besides the fact that you feel like you've been threatened, which I can tell that's part of an issue here for you, by his probably bad choice of words as to what he's trying to achieve, what's your aversion to building a house that gives you more value to your property? Your property. It's not a significant number of feet, so I'm curious as to if this is just because you felt like you had been threatened that it created an issue, but in all sensibility, does this really cause a property value problem for you?
That's a good question, and part of my rationale is that from my experience, and I talked to developers, I sat on boards with real estate developers, shopping center developers, and architects and people, but we were pretty much of an opinion that if communities got sloppy in terms of handing out variances of convenience that I referred to, that they did not uphold their regulations and have legally substantive reasons and rationale to grant variances, and the operative word is hardship, then things start to get out of control. You get haphazard development. You get buildings that are aesthetically, they just don't seem to fit, and it has a long-term impact on property values. And we've all suffered some things in property values in the last 5 years. And it just, put yourself in my shoes just for a moment, but to come into the community and move into Tennessee, and we love it here, to pick a new development that's been recently platted and has aesthetically very attractive buildings, you're basically asking me, what's the harm? I say it was recently platted, and I know communities across the country that in brand new development on flat lots, the building department reflects, tells people, stops them dead in their tracks and say, you designed it to fit the zoning codes here and the setback regulations, because we just don't grant variances in brand new construction. And I have that in my past, and I'm trying to tell you, I had high confidence that in buying into a new development and with very attractive structures, that's what we'd be getting. I'm surprised that we're in this position, and I don't think the developer, Mr. Buddy Dunn and Mr. Walker, have fully explored their options of how to take these kind of structures and arrange them in such a way to where we wouldn't be having this conversation. Very frankly, if the building department were happy and he were building something that fit, I wouldn't be sitting here. If the building department becomes happy, I'll be happy. Because I see a long-term impact to some of us if structures are out. And we'll get to the next one, and I'll be far more brief, but the next structure is right at the entryway, and it's out into the setback area, and it almost, in my mind, starts to create a little bit of a tunnel vision thing. But on Lot 5, he's got one of his larger models sitting on that lot. I think the square footage was around 2,600 square feet. And he has models all the way down to 1,600 square feet. And so I'm saying, I think he could do better. He could go back to the drawing boards and come up with an aesthetically pleasing one of his alternate models, and we probably wouldn't be here.
Okay. So given that same thought process, given what this plotted property looks like, it seems the two that he's come to ask about are significantly unusually shaped lots, given the rest of the lots that are shown here. Do you have a feeling about that one way or another? He's really got some unusually shaped lots there. That create some issues. So do you not feel that there are circumstances, hardship from that standpoint?
In brand new construction with all those models to choose from, even though they were unusual, I'm sure he would have noted that as he platted it out, and I think he had something in mind to put there right in the beginning. And somehow, I think one of the critical issues is, how does this fellow build the second house that he built in the subdivision that's right across the street from the next application, number 107? It's right across the street to the north there, and it has 20-foot setbacks in both directions. Didn't seem to have a problem doing that one. Why are we having problems on these other two corner lots? You know, I don't understand. I didn't think we would ever be facing this kind of a situation. I've tried to answer your question as best I could.
That's good. Thank you.
Is there any more that you want to add to this?
No, and I will probably make a further comment, on the next one, but it'll be far more brief, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else speaking in opposition? Okay.
Thank you.
Seconds.
The only thing I'd like to say is the one he's speaking of across the street, if you look at the plat plan, has 20-foot setback drawn on it already. And it is a larger lot. The lot is wider, for one. You know, this, like the one he's talking about across the street from him, 33 feet is about as big a house as I can get on there if I don't push the boundaries. And with the front and backyard and the Class C buffer in the back, I have to keep it pulled forward for the minimum setback rules and everything. Just that's all I have to say.
What size house are you putting on this property?
On Lot 5, it is about 2,350 square feet, including the bonus room.
So it's the largest model that you have available is what?
Yes, ma'am, it is. And he is right, I do have a 1,600 square foot house that we have out there. It doesn't have a bonus room. I can't sell a house without a bonus room. I just hadn't been able to, except for the one that was an elderly couple. That's the only one that's that small.
Did you try to fit any of the other models with bonus room, given you have a 1,900 to 2,100 square foot option? Did you try to situate any of these other drawings onto this property?
All of them, the way they sit with the garage protruding forward, it pushed that boundary on that side. And since I had to face Jennifer Court, if I could have if I faced Gina,
Okay.
the backyard would not work.
So therein lies part of the situation is that he's been conditioned to face this towards the court, which puts you on that odd shaped
Yes, ma'am.
piece right there.
Yeah, and see, if you was to turn any of the models the other way facing Gina, which I can't do, there's not enough backyard and front yard.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, we'll close.
We'll close public hearing, case 106.
Discussions.
I think it's a square peg in a round hole. I think there are more than 7 options that can go here. I think people have built 2,200 square foot houses that complied in space like this, and it feels like that we're just trying to put something that already exists into a spot that just doesn't work for it. And I think that there could be a 2,300 square foot house that would be aesthetically pleasing, that would embrace both streets that it touches, and have plenty of room for bonus rooms and family and all. And it might take more architectural work, but I don't see the lot being anything that keeps that from happening by its shape or size or covenants. And I have a great respect for our Metro Council and our elected officials, and the council person of that district came to us and asked us to vote against it. And
He's been on the council for years, and as Joey pointed out, I don't remember, this is, I think, his first time here.
so to me, I do believe that had the council person not shown up, I would have serious concerns about it. But when the council people do show up, especially without the lack of really strong evidence, I tend to defer to the elected officials in that neighborhood and respect that. So I don't see granting this one at this point.
I tend to agree. I don't personally think always that an irregular shaped lot is a real hindrance. I think sometimes can be a real bonus, and I've always kind of had a pride and challenge of trying to do different things on odd shaped lots, and you have a clear space here to do a lot with, and I think a little bit of creative thought can meet the code and put a very nice property on that house on that property. So, David?
I agree with what David said. It is an odd-shaped lot, but it's not a small lot per se. And I think that there would be another option to build something comparable or similar, but it may not just fit in the existing kind of 3 or 4 models that they currently have. And then once again, I'll defer to the council person on this who rather strongly objected and, came here to, express that.
I feel very much in support of what the councilman has come here to say, and I think the builder did themselves a great disservice in not meeting with the group and probably overstating the severity of the situation. You probably would have gone a long way to be able to sit and talk to the neighbors. I do feel like this is an odd-shaped lot. I do feel like we grant these pretty consistently given the right parameters. However, the fact that he's got an open palette to work with, this is not, a condition that's been there. I do understand some of the confusion, I think, with the builder looking at some of these, thinking there were setbacks and moving from that direction when they ran their performance. So I do understand that there's a challenge there, but I think, with all due respect to our opposition, I feel like the conditions of this plat were pretty well understood as a part of what you all put together when you started the project. So it's very difficult, from a business standpoint, for me not to see that and to see that there's an unusual, and I give you respect for that situation, but I also feel like you probably haven't exercised enough creativity in trying to figure out a way to make that work.
Yeah, and I agree with you that this is very different from our other odd or narrow-shaped lots, because this is kind of, a brand-new subdivision. Mm-hmm. Clearly, they wanted a cul-de-sac, and if they had done some other design or pushed the cul-de-sac back, you wouldn't have had this kind of lot. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's odd-shaped, because this is the house next to the cul-de-sac, and most of the time when we have an odd-shaped lot, it's in an existing neighborhood, and it's a one-off lot, and that's probably the reason no one's built on it, because it's hard.
In 20 years, this might make sense.
Yeah. But when you start from scratch and you're the one that's laying out the streets and laying out the plots, that's a harder argument to make about the odd-shaped lot.
Okay, is anybody prepared for a motion?
Well, I'll move that we deny the request because the conditions submitted haven't been met.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to deny and a second based on the conditions have not been met to satisfy the building code. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to deny, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion fails. The request fails.
Case 106 is denied on a vote of 4-0. Our next case, case 2013-107, The subject property is located on parcel 23, located here. I've oriented the site plan to reflect. The nature of this request is a street setback variance only on this lot. The proposed garage will come in off the south side of the property. It is 20 feet off of that street, so that conforms unlike the prior case. The setback variance will be on Raven Drive at its closest approach. I'm listing 10 feet. I believe it's actually 11 foot, 6 inches. I'm sorry, that scale, I've scaled that down and shrunk it so far. I'll blow that up here in just a minute to give you the exact number there. This is looking at the subject property in the upper left-hand photograph. I'm looking right into the lot itself, facing Raven Drive is on the left-hand side where the fire hydrant is. This is the road that leads in from the subdivision. The bottom right photograph are the adjoining parcels to the south, currently under construction. And then it views along Jennifer here, and then the adjoining parcel due north of the subject site, and again, those another look at those parcels to the south. Gina Lane, I apologize. It's Gina Lane located here. Raven, Gina. And this is the lot that is shown there. The applicant proposes the setback variance along Raven Drive, and that is the case records. We have it. Mr. Walker, if you would like, come forward, present your testimony on case 107. Again, all parties still 15 minutes for each side to discuss.
This lot is more irregular than the other one. As you can tell, it's very narrow in the back, and with the setback and the, it's, I don't know what to say. And I would like to say one thing, though. Your elected official, he is newly elected. The gentleman that helped with this subdivision to help get this approved is no longer a councilman in that area. So this gentleman is newly elected. I'm sure if you look, he's very last election maybe.
Well, that was 2 years ago, right?
Right.
Well,
that's newly elected when you've been there 6 years.
And we have term limits too.
Yeah.
So.
How many square feet is this second house?
Now, this one here is proposed to have about 2,200 square feet.
Okay.
Well, address what we talked about. We get these kind of things all the time. There's an odd-shaped lot, and it's unbuilt upon. And really, the reason it's unbuilt upon because it's such an odd or narrow-shaped lot
Yes,
just over the years. And they come to us and they say, help. And this is a new subdivision. Somebody just recently did this.
Well,
and you
yes, it's new.
could have designed it differently.
We did not design it. Dale and Associates designed it. We just have to go by what them.
Well, someone
the planning
hired
commission
them.
made.
I mean, there was
we hired them, yes, sir.
Okay, well,
we
then-
have to go by what they say and what the planning commission signs off on. I can't tell them I want this road to go over here 5 feet.
But what we're saying is, this was your project. You could have.
Yes, sir. I understand, but I only have the parameters I have to work with.
Well, but they were self-imposed parameters.
No, sir. All the drawings.
Well, I guess here's what I'm saying, and I understand what you're saying, but I
have 9 acres, and I have to fit 23 houses on 4.5 acres.
Well, and I don't know how you approached it with the different plans, but if this acreage was unique, then the design of the homes would have most likely had to have been unique to these acres. And and again, we're not here to talk about aesthetics, but I'm about to. That's not how we approve things. But when I look at this lot here, I see the dotted line. That you have a 10-foot dotted line, and I think it's 20. But even pulling that in, you've got a really long strip on the street that you enter your subdivision from, and that should be kind of the primo, prettiest house in the neighborhood.
I want to keep it that way.
Right, but it doesn't face the street that you enter on, and
they won't let me face the street I enter on.
Well,
I would love to.
Is that on the
requiring
plan?
that it faces Gino.
Yeah,
that what this
I'm
says?
required to face that way.
They're requiring it face
Okay,
this
that's
instead
it.
of that. That's not his issue.
And
He didn't.
And I have no trouble putting a smaller house. I can sell a smaller house, but I don't want to degrade their, everybody's property value for a 1,600 square foot house.
Right, and I understand that, and I guess, but I still, like I said, I'm looking at the buildable lot, and, it feels like the same kind of issues of, and again, this one is a little bit different, and it has probably a little less of a encroachment into the variance is not as great as what the other one was, I don't believe, but I'll have to ask, Joey.
Well, it's 11'8" on that back corner.
Okay, then it is as much
Yes.
as the other, so I read that wrong.
Yes. Now, there is another 9 foot there also. On the plot, the big plot you have, it shows also the sidewalk that goes up both sides and the curb. But I'll do whatever you tell me.
So are
to do.
you telling me that house will sit 20 feet from the street?
From the street, yes, sir. From the back of the curb, there's 9 more feet to the property line, which is shown. The property line is what is drawn.
Okay, so the side of that house would be 20 feet from the street?
Yes, it'd be 20'8".
Okay.
And I know you are feeling like you haven't gotten anything from us, but the council person basically did not object to the item that we put on consent, 108.
It was already built.
Sorry, I got a UNO letter and I have a UNO letter and everything.
Well,
on that house.
when I reviewed the consent agenda, Joey had said that it deviated by 4 feet. So everything that you're asking for is at least 10. So, there was a difference in a 4 foot versus 10, and so which is I think why the council person said, hey, we can live with it. It's not as serious.
Well, I'm trying to help the homeowner there too. I didn't have to even do a variance. Richard Tonopoulos said I didn't have to do a variance on her because it's done.
Right.
I done got a UNO, but I was trying to help her where she wouldn't have any trouble later on if she goes to sale.
Yeah, and that
too.
For the record's purposes, as staff, we wanted to make sure that lot was covered in an appeal too, since the mistake is clearly on that lot ours that we made, and I didn't want her to have a clouded title should she try to sell that.
Okay. We understand.
All right.
Thank you.
So is it, okay. Thank you.
Okay, you'll have 9 minutes and 20 seconds for rebuttal.
Oh, this is opposition.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you once again. James Zant, 2113 Gina Lane, Hermitage. I think most, if not all, of my prior comments apply on this particular situation. This is another corner lot that was, there were only 4, 108 that was on the consent agenda was the second corner lot, and then the one you just heard, and now this one are the third and fourth, respectively. Mr. Walker did reference something that was true that we hadn't talked until today for the last several weeks. On the 23rd of September is the day that we received our notices from Metro, and as soon as I read it, I thought, oh no, but I did see the realtor. He is a captive realtor, you might say, who markets these property, and I saw her across the street, so I went over, and Cameron Walker showed up not long after. And much as you brought to the forefront, I've watched a lot of developers handle things over the years, and the smartest thing that if you find yourself in a circumstance, and I'm not saying these are easy circumstances, but if you, as a developer, when you find yourself in easy circumstances, the thing you want to do, and I mentioned this to Lisa Neff, the realtor, and to Cameron, I said, you need to get out in front of it. You need to tell the people what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you're going through this process. And if he truly had exhausted all of his model selections to do these particular lots, or could prove it to us, we probably wouldn't have been here. But we didn't have an area meeting. we didn't have a neighborhood meeting. And we were out of town from the 24th until October 1st, and one of the neighbors handed me the letter that Mr. Walker had sent us saying that Metro had changed the ballgame. They were unaware of that, and they were going to have to build shotgun houses if they didn't get their variances. And that, you're right, he could have chosen better words than that. It got me a little bit excited, but I think he alluded to the fact that there were site plans attached to that letter. I had to call downtown and get the secretary, Linda, to email me the site plans. And if I made any error in anything that I presented to you, it could have been square footage. That's why I referred to it as to what the percentages were of the sites of the building structure that I felt were encroaching. And I only got C's in trigonometry in school, and I did my very best. But on this particular lot, I calculated out roughly 230 square feet plus or minus. It's I think you're an architect or perhaps a designer of sorts, but pardon? Construction. Okay. He knows the trade then. At any rate, he's knowledgeable. You're all knowledgeable. If I made an error on any of the square footage, it was human error, but I did my very best with what remains of my limited trigonometry training. But nonetheless, we have significant encroachments that I calculated at 13% on the prior hearing and roughly 12% on this one. And I do think he could do better in terms of how he could arrange on the lot and still keep the basic aesthetics of the development. When it's finished, and if it's finished complete and integrally with what had been presented to each of us that bought in here, it will be a dynamite complete subdivision. And it's most of the way there now. There are roughly 15 units built on the 23 lots. So I just wanted to clarify those points, but most of what I had said before, if not all of it, is pertinent here. I don't think that we have, the only hardships that we do have appear to be self-imposed, and I think he could do better in terms of what he were attempting to build and still keep the general aesthetics. Thank you.
And I do just wanted to say, because this is the second time I was going to say it, previous case, but I do appreciate the packet of information you sent. It's one of the most thorough that we've seen from someone who is opposed to a project, and I appreciate that. But the other thing I do appreciate very much is that you were very complimentary of the quality of work that the developer has done, and also very complimentary of many aspects of what the developer is doing and the final work. And a lot of times these things appear to be very personal, and you didn't come across that way at all. It was just, no, I'm opposed for these reasons, but I have a great deal of respect for what the work that the builder's done, and I thought it was very nicely done and professionally done and very appreciated. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That's very kind of you. In life, you find that we need to hear more of the good things and dwell less on the bad. So that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you so much.
Got rebuttal?
Mrs. Hartman.
I just would like to say that I did not have a hearing with the community. I did not. As soon as we got the applications done, I sent them letters with the drawings. He did get drawings, unless whoever held them for him lost them. He got drawings with the lots, highlighted what we were trying to do. So I wasn't trying to hide anything from them, not trying to hide anything. I was just trying to keep the house as big as I could for them and for me.
Well, and I think that I appreciate it too, and we have concerns with it, and I don't know how this discussion will go because this lot's a little different than the other one, and I understand that, but I will say I'm not opposed to granting variances, but I think that these did feel a little extreme, and also felt like that didn't have that extra effort that says, hey, we have tried everything. And so you may have, but you didn't convince your community that you did, and I think that's an important missing link to this process. So I think I don't know what the rule is if you try everything and get the community buy-in, and you still need to have something approved, what that process is. But, it seems like that it might be more receptive if it's less severe and has the buy-in of kind of the neighbors and council. It just goes a long way with the group.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing. Joey?
Close the public hearing on case 107.
I have a question to ask our legal advisor over here. Although a site plan like this one has a restriction on there that states any house built on this lot shall face towards Gina Drive or Gina Lane only, does this body have the authority to change that restriction, let the house?
That's typically managed, granted, analyzed by the planning department. And obviously, we try to keep our affairs kind of delineated between what they do and what we do here at BZA.
Yeah, I didn't want to start getting into planning, but I mean, if we see an appeal come in on what apparently is being appealed because in the appellant's mind it's a restricted lot, and we see that it may have more flexibility if it did not. I guess that was my basis for the question.
So the Planning Commission could, if they were to take that up back to the Planning Commission and say it's hard to build on, we'd like to turn it the other way, and what do you think? That they could take that away or no?
Plats get amended. I mean, it happens. It's a process. I don't mean to be flip and suggest that it's somehow need to fill out a piece of paper and have it stamped by somebody over in the Metro office building and it's done. But nevertheless, it is a process that is available to landowners in circumstances like these. It may be wise. Obviously, this board and Metro Legal are very slow to advise people one way or the other on that. I always encourage them to consult with their own attorneys to see if that would be prudent for them, he said while on television. That said, though, there are processes available to landowners that could potentially benefit them in just the scenarios that you've laid out.
So I guess in short, such a restriction as that is not an appealable item, like a setback line.
You'd have to amend the plat.
Not to us.
Not to us, okay.
But it's also a path, so a path that the property owner could take to eliminate the hardship of the strange lot shape. And since that process hasn't been exhausted, it may mean that we don't,
Well, I disagree with that, David, only because the lot on the other side is built the same way with the same conditions, and so it might make it an odd scenario. I mean, they've already been, required, and the one directly across the street is doing the same thing, and so the consistency of the neighborhood only makes sense that they live with these conditions. And frankly, I understood the situation on this other lot, and it was flat, and they've got lots of space. I don't feel the same way about this lot. I feel like this lot is definitely an unusual shape. It's not a tremendous variance that they're asking for from the side setback. It's not objectionable as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I still have an issue, unfortunately, with the politics and diplomacy under which this was conducted. I think that in the neighborhood, in my opinion, it would have behooved you to sit down with your folks, and if they could have seen that bigger houses would have helped their property values, it may have been a moot issue. But at this point, that wasn't the way it went, and I didn't have strong feelings about the first one, but I do have stronger feelings about the second one being definitely a hardship, given the conditions set by the Planning Commission, as well as the narrowness of this lot is definitely a different condition than the last.
That being said, is there any more comments? Anybody want to entertain a motion?
Okay, Joey, I'm going to make a motion to approve this variance request based on the hardship of the narrowness, and can we put the condition is not self-imposed? This is a planning property? Okay, but it's not self-imposed. Anybody else?
Is that your motion?
That's the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Okay, so Somebody else hit a motion.
I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Nope.
I will say I see a little difference in the two lots, but I don't see a vast difference. I mean, both lots have the same restriction on which direction the house must face. And I still think maybe the only thing I can see that would maybe a little bit of a difference in the two is this lot does seem to be more narrow and more long shaped than the other one. It could be a restriction, so my point. So we have a motion and a second.
And the difference that I see in the two properties is if you look at this and the retention ponds and everything and the natural place, this is probably the best place to enter the property from Tulip Grove Road. And given the kind of restrictions of kind of how it comes in, I think it's not self-imposed like the other one.
Well, other than the folks that are doing, I mean, it's their development. That's,
yes, I mean, they could do the whole development, but
that's the only thing that
but to me,
That's what variances are for.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're designing something in the cul-de-sac over here, I mean, if you were, I'm not an architect, but if I was laying this out, I don't see that many other ways to lay it out on the lower half, but the upper half I do, and I think that was, there could have been different designs there. You know. But like I said, given where the road has to enter off of Tulip Grove Road and the position of this being by that road, I just don't think there's a whole lot they could have done.
I think, well, and some of that I think is driven more by price point of the properties than it is the actual land and lot. So, I mean, there's a reason that the houses are built, exactly like they are, and I think that part of it's driving it. But, I mean, I'm very sympathetic. I do see that I do think that this lot is different. I'm not sure it's different enough without that extra evidence to me of the evidence of extra effort that I think would involve, a council person saying, hey, I may not like it, but boy, it looks like they've done everything they can do.
If Chris Whitson were here, he'd probably kind of see where we're going right here and count heads and see what happened to council person, and he would probably suggest, let's defer it, and maybe the council person can come up with something else besides this. We have questions about the entrance, and can planning do something differently? I don't know, but that's what Chris Whitson would say.
Well, and that was the reason that I had said earlier too about, is there, and actually you mentioned to the applicant that regardless of how I may vote today, if there is evidence in the future of, neighborhood meetings, council, support coming back with the same piece of property, but having maybe a less invasive variance and saying, hey, look, we've tried it all and everybody is on board, I would be very receptive to that. So my opposition to these two pieces of property right now really have to do with as much process and trying and that type of thing and showing,
Well, we will ask the applicant. There are obviously four of us here, and as Joey said when the meeting started, you need 4 votes. So it is up to the applicant if he wants to defer it and meet with the council person and the neighbors to see if they could come up with some better alternative to this. It's your choice.
Can we ask the applicant, Joey, in the middle of our discussion, if he'd be willing to entertain a deferral in his best interest?
You may.
All right. Are you willing to entertain a deferral in your best interest to try to get together with this neighborhood and councilman to see? I mean, we're at a point right now. You're kind of getting.
Well, can I say something first?
Of course you can.
Sure.
I came to the codes department to get a permit for lot 5. That's the only one I came to get a permit for. I was told then the way they were drawn, I needed to go ahead and do the appeals for 23 and 12. I was not planning to build on 23 anytime soon. Well, I mean, so I made a plot plan for 23. Rough, real quick. I was not planning to build on 23.
So do you even want to vote on this?
So it might be one of your last houses that you build in the subdivision.
Yes, and I'll make it smaller.
Well, then
I can
let's.
come back.
Well, then let's hold off and not
let's-
put you in a position to be stuck.
Yeah, because if
Why
we
don't you-
deny
you
it, then
explore
you
everything.
can't come back within.
How long can we defer this?
What if I come back to codes with another plot plan that's, completely
Yeah, that's,
inside the
Joey.
parameters?
Yeah, if it complies with the code, we'll issue
Then
a
you don't have an
permit.
issue.
then you don't have to see us again.
You don't have to see us.
I can make a smaller house.
Well, and as
Well,
we
what we
said,
were saying is,
But I'm
we
saying-
can
but I'm
give you
saying-
some
Are you
sort
saying
of,
you'd like to withdraw this?
I'd like to withdraw this one.
Joey, he'd like to withdraw
not
this.
defer it. Now, explain him the difference of deferring and withdrawing, Joey.
There's none on the first one. There's no prejudice on the first withdrawal.
Okay.
So there's none.
But what we were saying is, okay, it doesn't seem like you have the votes today. There are 4 people here.
Right.
But maybe if you met with the neighbors and the council person, you might not be able to get what you proposed, as David
What he's
said.
saying is he doesn't even have a proposal on
I
this
don't
right
even-
now.
Okay.
I haven't even
Okay, well, that's not,
marketed that
that's not,
house.
okay,
Why don't
so,
you withdraw this on the record and
I'd like to withdraw this.
protect your
Okay.
rights?
yeah.
And then you can get together with your neighbors and make this a much better
But if you
motion.
do have to come back here, we would strongly suggest you get together with your neighbors and your council
The
person.
next one will comply.
All right, the record
Thank you.
reflect case 107 withdrawn by the applicant.
All right.
That withdrawal by your rules is without prejudice. They can
This is
refile.
hard? Okay.
All right, with that, the Board of Zoning Appeals is adjourned today. Thank you.